Welcome, ACSA family and friends, to another episode of Common Purpose, Uncommon Times. As always, Wes Smith, your executive director, and just honored to serve each and every one of you. We've got a really important topic tonight. We're going to be talking with some experts about National Child Abuse Prevention Month. At ACSA, we talk about this all the time. We are first and foremost student advocates. And when we talk about their wellness, we talk about no more important issue than that. So tonight we'll have some resources. We'll talk to some experts. But before we get into that, I wanted to touch base and reflect on Legislative Action Day from last week. We talk about this all the time in this show, that we have an opportunity to look at silver linings, things we didn't know that we could do, innovations, pivot, growth, evolution that have come out of this crisis. And Legislative Action Day is another example of that. Typically we get between three, at most, 400 people at a Legislative Action Day. We had 650 people register and participate. It's a record number for us. The content was exceptional. The engagement was better than we've ever had, because typically, as you know, that have participated, when you sit in the audience, you don't have a chance to ask questions of the expert panelists. They're typically pre-populated. But in this environment, virtually, you were able to ask questions and get answers to your questions. It was a true conversation with policymakers. So what an exciting day for us as we think about moving forward. We're going to learn from this. Again, like we've said before, if we look the same after this as we did before, then we didn't learn a thing. And guess what? We're going to learn, and we're going to look a little different as we do this moving forward. And for those of you that weren't there, it was really exciting because we kept talking about the governor's statement, the June 15 triggers, and his expectation that we'll be in the fall, 5 days a week, all day, in person. And so we asked key policymakers about that. And at one point, they got frustrated and they said, well, why do you keep asking us this? We are coming back in the fall and we're going to be in person and we're going to be there all day. That's what's going to happen. And we said, well, great. So let's see then policy that facilitates that at the local level. You see, because as we know all too well, political talking points don't reopen schools, right? Policy and support, resources. That's what reopens schools. And so let's hold them to their word. Let's make sure that you have everything you need: clarity in policy, the resources to do what you know how to do, which is to bring students back to in-person instruction full-time in the fall. Now we know that there are going to be some families who are going to opt out of that. So we know there will be some measure of distance learning. And so we're waiting for the legislature to clarify that, the administration as well. How much is appropriate? How do we do that? Again, we know we're going to have some options. We suspect those options will be limited, but we'll have to have them. So we'll look for that as well. The thing that was really exciting about our Legislative Action Day was that we heard that the state tax returns are even higher than anticipated. And they were higher than anticipated the last time we checked in, which means we've got some options. And so we've got to once again advocate for those resources. They hadn't been talking about paying down the STRS and PERS obligation. Let's bring that up loudly. That will help your general fund, even in out years. Let's pay off all of the deferral. Let's fund more for students with special needs and those programs who have been criminally underfunded at the federal level since the 70s. Let's put some money there. All right, if we have more resources, let's make sure that those who need those resources most get them. So it's an exciting time. We're innovating. We're figuring out how to advocate in this virtual world. We've got the attention of key policymakers, and we've got the loudest, most influential voice in public education, and that's you. So thank you. Thank you for raising your voices and making a difference for our students. Well, speaking of students, as I mentioned a little bit ago, April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. We know our students deserve to grow up in supportive, loving environments that are free from abuse. And that's not where a lot of them are. recently I looked at some data that says California students, 16% of all California students have at least one ACE, one adverse childhood experience, which could include child abuse, 16%. And so what do we do to change that, to eliminate that percentage? And then we know that in this pandemic, these issues are even more important. Why? Well, because things are more stressful, and the stress of the adults gets passed on to the students. We also know that students aren't in school or haven't been as much. We know that there's some folks out there that brought them back earlier and doing a great job of keeping them safe in in-person environment. We just haven't had as many of our students back for as much of the school, so we don't get to see them. We don't get to do our mandated reporting like we normally would. So we know that there are going to be significant issues that we have to address as we enter our next normal. Well, let's bring in our expert tonight. One of our longest standing partners is Keenan and Associates. In fact, Keenan was on earlier this year on Common Purpose, and they did their food giveaway program. Over 250,000 meals they gave away because of this small Monday night show and the big hearts and generosity that that company has. And this is another area where they do great work. And with me tonight, I've got Ron Martin, who's the vice president of their school sector. I think he's got a lot of other titles too. So Ron, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell our folks what it is you do, and then we'll just jump right in to some of the research, some of the resources that you have, so that our folks have the tools that they need to address this horrible experience of child abuse. So Ron, welcome, and tell us a bit about what you do at Keenan.
Thanks, Wes. Well, I've been with Keenan now for about 27 years, and currently I'm the acting JPA manager for Northern California Relief. I believe it to be the largest joint powers authority for K-12s in the state of California. We have over 368 public entities in that pool. So I'm charged with making sure that the pool runs efficiently and that we're protecting our students from all losses, not just abuse, but every sort of lawsuit imaginable that faces schools. And there's a lot of challenges there. Yeah. And so it's a very challenging position, but I really enjoy it. And I've got a lot of relationships throughout the years. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening.
I'm glad to have you. And as you said, any resource that we spend in a courtroom is a resource we don't have in the classroom. So to your point, all of these issues matter because, as we know, our students are under-resourced by the state and federal government anyway. Right. So we can't afford to throw things away. Let me ask you this. I mean, National Child Abuse Prevention Month, why is this important to Keenan? This is something that you've prioritized, getting the message out, putting out resources. Why is this so important to you and your team at Keenan Associates?
Well, we're in the education business, so we want to make sure overall that, we're providing the resources to protect kids. And I think we're on the leading edge in terms of seeing where the exposures come from. And just, child abuse is the one example that's really been on the forefront for us the last 7 years. And so we wanted to make sure that we utilized all of the information, looked at all the aspects of the claims that were coming in, and develop tools and resources that are useful to reduce this exposure. And I think, we made a lot of progress in that 7 years. And one of the things when I first started this is that I noticed that there was a Child Abuse Prevention Month. I knew it was in April. It was a really good opportunity to kind of keep this on the forefront because of, keeping kids safe is extremely important. So, by doing it, in the springtime, it's kind of just keeps it on the top of mind. And so it's kind of fun to be involved in this process and provide, a lot of information for our districts to keep and maintain the awareness levels.
Yeah, thank you for that. As I was a teacher and principal and superintendent, and one of the trainings that was most helpful for me in really benefiting the overall safety of my students was the mandatory reporter training for school districts. So talk to us about that. How do folks find out about it, contact you, get information? Why is that training so important from your perspective?
Well, they did pass the AB 1432 law. I believe that's the site for mandatory reporter training. It's got to be done the first 6 weeks of school or the first 6 weeks of hire. So what I think differentiates us is we have an online system that districts can track that reporting and have record of that reporting in the event of an unfortunate claim comes through. So we've been able to do that. We're now in year 7, working on version 7. And, we try to not only identify the elements of CANRA, the Child Abuse Negligence Reporting Act, but also incorporate certain parts of our child abuse prevention program to make sure that, we're kind of adding additional information, which is kind of a supplement to the mandated reporter training. Our child abuse platform is extremely robust. So, the mandated reporter, that's the legal requirements. And what folks told us throughout our surveys is they wanted more information. So we created some additional information that we call our micro learning series that actually has short bursts of information that talks about grooming, boundaries, all of those types of things that are associated with child abuse. So we kind of given, you have to, if you see something, you have to report it, but we're giving the tools within our training to make sure that folks are aware of certain behaviors that you can identify before the actual bad act takes place.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, one of the most important, I've been through a lot of professional development. One of the most
Right.
important development activities I've been through, what it did is it made me aware, and it
Right.
gave me the tools to look for specific things. I didn't know what to look for as a beginning teacher, and you learn throughout. You mentioned being aware of grooming. I think that's a huge value to school systems, especially as we think about all the folks who use our facilities, who partner with us, and we have a responsibility to be paying attention for what they're doing as well. And I think that grooming, paying attention to it, what to look for, is just a great resource for school districts. Hey,
Yeah.
I'll remind our AXA family if you have a question for Ron about resources, about what they're seeing statewide, about how you might be able to help your communities, drop them in the chat, and we'll, as we always do, try to get them up there and let Ron help us out. Ron, Keenan partnered with the U.S. Attorney's Office to do some
Mhm.
webinars on child abuse prevention in the online classroom. And
Correct.
and I had mentioned at the beginning of this, one of the things that worries my members is that we're underreporting child abuse right now because we're not seeing as many students as often, right? And so,
Mhm.
uh, what has the response been to your webinars? And do you have data pertaining to the abuse reporting during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I can say that we felt it was important to address that issue, and I think it's a little early on in the process to really have any hard data. But we really wanted to be proactive and say, hey, these kids are at home. We want to make sure that they're safe while they're at home. So we did create. We actually had 2 webinars in regards to uh, the at-home learning, and those are also captured on our Keenan Safe Schools website. So anybody can go in and review those webinars. So again, we felt it was important. Right now, I can say overall, we've seen an overall decrease, even prior to COVID-19, in the amount of abuse claims that we're getting. A lot of the stuff we're getting now is the old stuff, that AB 218, the new law, allowed for the statute of limitations on older stuff to revive. So when this all happened, Wes, I looked at it as like you're trying to move an aircraft carrier 360 degrees. So, it started off a little slow, but now that we have the resources and everybody's implementing them, we're starting to see these reductions because people are really paying attention to what's going on. So I feel very optimistic as to, those districts that are actually utilizing our programs. Everything is tracking in the right direction for us.
Yeah. Like I said, I think during the pandemic, some of the underreporting um, ought to alarm us as a system. But I love hearing what you said at the beginning of that, which is the reporting was being reduced by good programs, by good training.
Right.
We were making a difference before the pandemic. So, let's learn from this. Let's go back to making a difference when we're all
Right.
back to this next
And
normal.
it could be a while before we actually get real data on it,
Yeah.
because typically, normally it would take a year to file. Minors would have up to a year to file a claim, but now with the new legislation, it's back basically an unlimited statute of limitations till they hit age 40.
Yeah.
So for us, we want to make sure as professional consultants that districts are aware of, the kids that are here today. We want to make sure we're keeping them safe to avoid any potential claims in the future.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think Keenan does a great job of this, making us aware of the impact of legislation and what it really means on the ground. You just kind of hinted at this, but what do districts really need to know about the recently passed legislation like AB 218? What do they need to know? What do they need to be cognizant of?
Well, there's two components. You have the older claims that are being revived, and we're managing those as they come in. But what I'm talking with districts today, it's because the minors have up until age 40 to file a lawsuit, and actually it's extended past that in some instances, that if we're doing making sure kids are safe today, we're kind of eliminating that future exposure down the line. And at the same time, we're creating that learning environment where kids feel safe. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. We take care of today's youth, we're eliminating the potential exposures down the line.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Students are returning. Some have been back.
Yeah.
Some of our friends around the state, Northern California, Orange County, some other places, have been back most of the year, in person, all day. Um, but as more and more students return to that in-person environment, uh, how has student behavior changed during this time? In other words, what should we be looking for as an expert? What can we do to be better stewards of the wellness and safety of our students?
Well, if you look at the way we were talking about the grooming or whatever. Usually, folks will identify the vulnerable. So I think we really need to be cognizant upon kind of taking a look at some of the kids when they're coming back to school. Are they What's different about them, if there is anything different? There's resources that are available. You had mentioned the ACEs, the CDC has a webinar coming up on the 23rd. I believe we sent information on that with our Child Abuse Prevention Month programming. So there will be some folks there talking about the ACEs and what to look for. In our mandated reporter training 7.0 that's currently in production, that's one of the things. We're not going to touch on it, in detail, because we have to get but we are going to make mention of the fact that we need to make sure, as these kids are back into the school environment, that we're really paying attention to their behaviors and how they're acting and those types of things. So it's going to be interesting, I think, transition. But I encourage all the folks to utilize our programs. And one thing I wanted to make clear is that everything that we built is for our customers. However, the Keenan prevention website also has a lot of these resources available to all school districts.
No, that's
So,
great. I was gonna ask you about that because I know that you do. I know that you give away a lot of these great tools and resources. Hopefully, someone from the team can maybe drop that into the chat or put it on the banner for folks to see that so that they can look at those. You mentioned something too that I think brings me back to something we talk about in the education world a lot, which is, we've got to evolve, we've got to adjust. How do we learn, right? Metacognition, apply that for this next normal. I would imagine you're looking at changing some of your trainings as well. Do you see Keenan changing its approach, adding some things because of where we are and what we've experienced?
I think we're always trying to innovate. And so really what we try to do is, like for example, our mandated reporter training, it's 32 minutes long. The state's is 3 hours long. And ours is a lot more condensed as it relates to the school district environment. So as we get into technology and all these things, so there's the online training, but we're also embracing this sort of format as well, and looking at working with our clients in regards to having these sorts of environments, having specific experts in the field coming in to talk about these different topics, and we'll do the same here with the abuse. So I think it's just a matter of whatever technology can allow us to do, we'll build those resources for our customers.
Awesome. We realize that with the push to reduce the digital divide in the state, and we've made some growth as a state, um, that we're able to communicate with community members and parents a lot more effectively than we did before. That more parents are gaining access to tools, to resources. Here's another example of that. Speaking of resources, by the way, we put yours into the chat. I also wanted our members to know the California Department of Social Services. They have a bunch of resources there, cdss.ca.gov. They have a toolkit, in fact, for Child Abuse Prevention Month. They have hashtags that you can do, and really include folks in the conversation, share resources. So if any districts are looking for some other free resources campaigns, the Department of Social Services has those as well. You know, we know that we have to learn. Right? That's one of our messages. And one of the things I'm hearing a lot is that relationships have become primary again. I was taught when I was going through teacher education programs that nothing in the classroom was as important as the relationship between the teacher and the student, between the adult and the student. Relationships first. I've heard Pedro Noguera recently talk about that, and others, Dr. Cantor and others, talking about the value and the importance of relationships. Our friends at Capturing Kids' Hearts, they built, programs around that concept. And I think the important thing about the relationships as it relates to this conversation is when our students trust us and when we know them, we identify changes in behavior much easier. So it's just one more reason why, as we come out of this pandemic, we've got to continue to focus on those pro-social relationships between adults in the system and our students. Um, what have you seen? So, what else can districts do, in your professional opinion, to keep
Well,
students safe outside of mandatory trainings or some of the things that we've talked about? And maybe you can mention some of the districts where you can share that have done some innovative work, that have done some good work. Let's lift up some of these high achievers, these lighthouses, if you will.
yeah, well, I think those that really have utilized the program really have seen results. I can, specifically, one district in general is Castro Valley Unified. It was amazing when I sat with Sherry Beats and she showed me what their training program was, and the amount of resources that were Keenan developed that were in her program. It was just like, wow, that's incredible. And I wish, everybody could do that. I would say the one thing you want to make sure you're doing is when you have new hires, make sure that you immerse them with all of these things, right at the time of hire. Because, those folks get into the district and, when they see those for the first time, that'll be like the new normal. The other thing I would encourage districts to do, include the same sort of mandated reporter type trainings for volunteers. And the one trend we're seeing is we're not seeing so much of the younger child or the middle school type of thing. The cases we're starting to see is more on the high school level, where you have a walk-on type of coaches or volunteers that are closer in proximity of age to the student. So we're seeing, that's where a majority of our claims are being at this particular time. So I honestly think that that's an area we need to focus on, and I'm encouraging our pools to be able to do that moving forward. Um, but overall, it's incredible the amount of, I think, progress that we've made with our pool, because I've been for 7 years very consistent on the messaging. And, to talk about our mandated reporter, we've had over 2 million course completions since we started this. And right now we're averaging probably 600,000 trainings a year. That's statewide. And so that's a pretty impressive number. And, after the trainings, we ask the employees, what did you think about it and everything? And we're constantly looking at that. And like you said, how can we make it better? That's what we're always trying to do. So we're very engaged from that perspective. And our goal really is to continue this program, continue to add resources, and we just need to make sure that they're being implemented. And I think we're going to take care of our kids today.
No,
And
I love the
and
positive.
for the future.
Love the positive focus. That's right. That's right. You mentioned your pool. I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about coverage in general and the importance of that.
Yeah, so usually you have your joint power. Most schools are in joint powers authorities, and they're kind of mutual type of insurance companies, but they don't have the capacity to take care of the severity of the risk, the high limits of insurance. And abuse claims fall into that particular category. So if you have single perpetrator, multiple victim type of cases with some of these, attorneys that are out there, those are pretty expensive type of cases. So as a JPA, you yourself cannot absorb that particular insurability. So we have to go out to the market. So the insurance marketplace is seeing what's going on, and they're starting to get a little nervous. And some pools are going into a claims made type of scenario. Ours stays occurrence based, and we haven't seen any disruption in our limit. So it's just a general overall in California, the insurance industry is getting a little concerned in terms of jury verdicts and those types of things. So what we try to do, if we're taking care of our group of folks, we've been successful in marketing and getting our programs renewed and everything. But we have to be consistent with what we're doing and continue to incorporate this training into our annual programs throughout the year. And like I said, our micro learning series is a supplement to that. They're 2 to 3 minute videos on all of these aspects that can be assigned to the employee, or actually can be shown in a staff meeting. So, again, it's just more of these types of things will help us from and we share all of this information that we're talking about today with our carriers. So, I mean, I don't want to alarm anybody. Our program's renewing at expiring, and no changes or anything like that, but it is becoming a challenge.
Yep, absolutely. No, thank you for that. Listen, we started this show to bring people together, connect people when people were feeling isolated at the beginning of the pandemic. We also wanted to clarify, educate, and offer hope, promote hope, because we think that's important. As I think about this topic, I'll tell you, Ron, what gives me hope. A week doesn't go by that I don't hear from our ACSA members and their concern about what's happening to their students and their commitment to paying attention and being there to support those students. As I said at the beginning, we believe that our students should be able to grow up and learn in supportive, loving environments free from abuse. And our members are committed to doing whatever it takes to protect their students. And that gives me hope. Ron, what gives you hope as you look at this topic or anything else? What gives you hope tonight?
Well, what's great, Wes, is that what you just said is what we're all about. We're in total alignment and lockstep with that statement. Is that we're in the education business. Our job is to make sure that we're providing the appropriate risk resources to protect schools. And so from that perspective, like I said, I've been doing this for 27 years, and I remember employment practices was an issue. We did a good job on that. So every time we get faced with a challenge, we're able to work together and partner to get through it. And, who knows what the next challenge will be, but I'm sure there's going to be one. But every one that we've had so far, we've been successful in managing those exposures. And it's because we have great partnerships with our members, and we're able to build great programs.
Yeah. Well, Ron, thanks for everything you do. Thanks for your involvement, not just in this topic, although this is a topic for tonight, but Keenan supports us in many ways. I want to thank you for that. We are here to support our students, and we can't do that work without allies like you. Thank you for taking some time tonight, and to all of our members out there. We say it all the time. This is one of those topics where it's even more true. Our students need us more now than they ever have before. So let's be there. Let's show up. Let's show up and show out. Support them. Let's use our allies. Few resources are there to make sure we meet their myriad of needs, because their needs are great. Well, folks, thanks for spending some time with us tonight. Again, we'll have another show when a topic comes up. We're working on a couple of things right now, so stay tuned. Look at your Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, wherever we send out invites. Keep checking, because we'll be back as soon as we have something to share and something to promote hope. Thanks, everybody, and as always, stay safe and be well. Until next time.